Mom didn't shed a tear. She didn't raise her voice or slam the phone shut. She didn't even bother to ask why. She said flatly, "A backyard." "Seriously, Lily?" "That's not a real wedding," she scoffed. "That's a garden party for people who couldn't afford better." Then she ended the call. No goodbye, no hesitation. That was the moment I knew she wouldn't be there. Not because she was sick or tied up, not because the timing didn't work out, not even because of a family emergency. She wouldn't come because in her mind, my wedding wasn't worth attending. It didn't scream status. It didn't come with fanfare or flair. It didn't put her center stage. I sat motionless on the porch, phone still in hand, the words echoing. The wooden steps creaked beneath me, the cold slicing through my sweatshirt like a blade. I clutched the phone, half hoping it might ring, that maybe she'd change her mind. Maybe she'd say it was a joke, that she didn't mean it, that she'd come. But silence came instead, thick and final. Adam came out quietly, 2 steaming mugs in hand. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. He passed me the mug and sat beside me without a word. The steam curled between us, softening the weight in the air. "She said no," I whispered, barely louder than the wind. He nodded slowly. No surprise, no judgment. "Because it's a backyard wedding," I said with a dry laugh. No chandeliers, no gold-rimmed plates, no violinists flown in from Italy. It wasn't the fantasy she wrote for herself about my wedding. She wanted to be the star of that day, he said, eyes steady. It hit me then. It had never been about me. She never asked about the lights. 6 months of my life wiring recycled glass and LEDs by hand. She never asked how we transformed our modest yard into a glowing grove of lanterns, how we dug up every inch of soil and replanted wildflowers 1 root at a time. She never wondered why we chose only 25 people, or what it meant to exchange vows in the backyard we built our lives in, not some rented ballroom. The only question she ever asked came weeks earlier, laced with condescension. "Tell me you're not doing some potluck thing?" she sneered. She didn't care enough to wait for an answer. Funny how some people reduce a wedding to optics, as if the soul of the day is measured in photo filters and table settings. My mother never asked about Adam. She cared more about Facebook comments than who would stand beside me at the altar. She didn't want to attend. She wanted to perform. It wasn't about love. It was about visibility. Still, I sent the invitation, printed, embossed, tied with hand-dyed silk thread. Soft lavender scent folded between the pages like a memory, but no RSVP ever came. When it arrived, she sent one message. "Looks like a homeschooled craft project." I almost laughed, then remembered. She forgot those years were her idea. 3 years of homeschooling she insisted on. What do you do when your own mother tells you without words that your joy, your love, your life isn't enough to show up for? When she decides your wedding day doesn't even merit a $20 cab fare? You cry in silence. Then you carry on. You string up the lights with shaking hands. You press your dress and wipe your eyes. You rewrite your vows, this time just for you. And you record everything because this is yours. My place in her world was never secure, always earned, never given. I was the second daughter, the one who never made a fuss, the one who wore her sister's old dresses without complaint, who never asked why entire pages of the photo albums skipped over my existence. At Rebecca's wedding, the grand production mom still parades in conversation, the one she name drops to neighbors and strangers alike. I wasn't a bridesmaid, not even close. I was seated nowhere near family. I was assigned to hide behind the floral arch, clipboard in one hand, walkie-talkie in the other, making sure the crab cakes didn't vanish before the toasts, and that the violinist didn't ruin the timing. I remember the shoes, clearance rack flats, digging into my heels by noon. I had blisters before the couple's first dance. I remember Rebecca's gown, imported silk, beaded by hand, worth more than my 4 years of college. And Mom, misty-eyed, crouched to perfect the train like she was preparing a queen for coronation. "Your turn will come," she whispered when I tried to step in for a single photo. That turn never came. Instead, I got a to-do list. Carry this, check that, be helpful, stay invisible. The only evidence I was even there is a blurry profile photo of me wiping down the cake table in the background. Someone tagged me once and captioned it, "The Help." I laughed out loud. I didn't correct them. What would be the point? By then, I knew exactly where I stood, so when I told Mom I was planning something quiet, simple, intimate, and outdoors, no bridal party, no microphone speeches, just vows under the sky and bread passed from hand to hand, she blinked like I'd said something scandalous. "Small?" she echoed, like I'd confessed to a crime. Her lips tightened into a line. "That's disappointing," she said slowly. "Don't you want something memorable?" I wanted something I would remember. The people I love, the man I chose. That was enough. Music beneath the open sky, food shared, not served. No cold chicken with name-tagged strangers. I didn't need chandeliers or a cake that cost more than my car. But Mom's expression said enough. I'd already disappointed her, that I was an embarrassment in satin. Not the wedding, me. I was too small in her world. A week later, Rebecca called. I thought maybe, just maybe, she was reaching out, trying to close the quiet between us. Instead, she launched right in. "Mom thinks you're spiraling. She's worried. She says you're sabotaging your own wedding because you're scared of being seen." I let her speak, every word cutting. I said calmly, "Thank you." Then I hung up without goodbye. They never understood me. Not once, not really. What I was doing wasn't sabotage. It wasn't sabotage. It was reclamation. This wedding, this day, wasn't a stage for my mother's performance. Not a PR stunt for family optics. Not a reunion for cousins I barely remembered. It was mine, entirely, and I refused to plan it like I needed anyone's approval. The morning of my wedding, the sky was soft gray, not gloomy, just quiet. The kind of gray that made every color sing, that turned every flower into a stroke of paint. I stood barefoot on the porch, looking at the rows of mismatched chairs, each borrowed with love, each one tied with bits of hand-dyed ribbon. The wind stirred gently, tugging softly on the lanterns strung across the trees. They swayed quietly, weightless and unbothered. Inside, Samira was steaming my dress, a soft cream gown with pockets, simple and perfect. She had made it herself, every seam stitched with quiet care. Adam's cousin was laying out the place cards on our long table. No gold foil, no calligraphy curls. Just names, printed on seeded paper so guests could plant something beautiful afterward. I walked through the garden slowly, letting my hand graze each mismatched chair, each mason jar filled with wildflowers and fragrant herbs. These weren't just decorations. They were choices, deliberate and full of meaning. Every detail had a reason, and that reason was always love. No suite, no stylist, just a bathroom mirror and steady hands. I pulled my hair into a loose knot and tucked 2 gardenias behind my ear. When I stepped into the dress, it felt like quiet armor, not to defend, but to hold me together. Samira met my eyes in the mirror. "You good?" I nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." She stepped behind me, fixed a falling strap. "You look like you." I've never felt more like me. At exactly 4:12 p.m., the ceremony began. No music, just bird song and wind. The soft creak of the gate as guests entered, gently, like a hush falling over memory, like stepping into something sacred and real. Adam stood at the end of the garden path, not an aisle, just earth and leaves. His navy suit slightly wrinkled, his smile off-center. His hands trembled when he saw me. Mine too, holding the bouquet tighter than I meant to. There was no efficient, no rehearsed lines. We spoke only to each other. I don't remember the words, but I remember the feeling, like finally standing still after years of running, like being heard by someone who wasn't waiting to talk. After we kissed, the guests clapped, not out of politeness, but with full hearts, my favorite sound in the world. Dinner came from enamel pots the size of small planets, served family style. No servers, no menus, no assigned seats, just bowls being passed hand to hand, laughter bouncing off the ivy-covered fence like music. Someone humming to a Van Morrison song playing low through a speaker we borrowed from Adam's uncle. When the sky turned navy, the lights flicked on. Every string we'd hung, every bulb we'd tested, lit. The whole yard lit up like a firefly, moved into every single tree. At one point, Samira leaned close and whispered, "It's like a movie set." But it wasn't. It looked like home, because it was. And I knew, even as I laughed barefoot under those glowing strings of light, that the ones who didn't come would never really see it. Not in motion, not in color, not with feeling. They wouldn't see how Adam looked at me like I was the only thing in the universe. They'd never hear the toasts, the ones spoken by people who really knew us. They wouldn't taste the lavender lemonade or the fig cake Adam's aunt had baked that morning, or smell the rosemary smoke curling up from the old grill. All they'd ever see, photos. And by then, it wouldn't matter. It would be too late. We didn't plan to post. At least, not at first. Our friend Diana, not a wedding videographer, just a filmmaker with a camera and a gift, offered to film the day as a gift. She didn't film it like a wedding. No sweeping drone shots, no slow-motion veil tosses, just us, as we were, setting tables, tucking loose strands, holding hands beneath a curtain of string lights. 2 weeks after the wedding, she sent us a short film, just 90 seconds. No voiceover, no words, just music, soft, slow, tender. It opened with Adam wiping nervous palms on his pants just before the ceremony began. Then me, tying ribbon around a jar of wildflowers. The final frame, us dancing barefoot on warm flagstone, paper lanterns above swaying like distant stars, like stars pretending to be closer than they were. I cried the first time I watched it. I watched it 3 times, alone, in the quiet of our living room. Then I called Adam in. He stayed silent while it played. When it ended, he took a breath like he'd been holding it, and said, "It feels like something ancient." I nodded slowly. "Is it petty if I post it?" I asked. He smiled, soft and knowing. Sometimes petty is just honesty overdue, so I posted it, quietly. No hashtags, no flourish, just October 8th, home, love. Then I put my phone down and went to sleep. By morning, it had crossed 20,000 views. By noon, 50,000. By dinner, a writer from a small design blog messaged me, "Was this your wedding? We'd love to feature it." I stared at the message, blinking, then read it twice. I wasn't expecting that. By the end of that same week, our wedding had appeared in 2 online magazines and a viral roundup titled, "The Most Beautiful Backyard Wedding You'll Ever See." I didn't feel victorious, not exactly. I felt seen, in a way I never thought I could be, not by strangers, but by people who weren't trying to rewrite me into something more convenient. And then the calls began. Rebecca was first. She left a voicemail. It started with "wow" and ended with, "Why didn't you tell us it would look like that?" Then a text came from my aunt. "That wedding video is everywhere." It read, "Didn't realize it was yours. It's stunning." And then, finally, my mother. No phone call, just a text, one sharp line. "Is this the wedding I wasn't invited to?" I stared at it for a long time. Technically, she had been invited. She just chose not to respond. The next morning, she followed up with another message. "You made us look bad, Lily. People keep asking why we weren't there. You could have warned us." Warned them? I read it again. Then again, I wasn't sure what part bothered her most. That the wedding happened without her, or that it was beautiful without her. This wasn't about hurt feelings. This was about optics. It had always been about how things looked. I didn't reply to her message, not right away. I didn't know what to say to someone more upset about missing the pictures than missing the actual moment itself. But I responded 3 days later, after Adam watched the short film again, this time with a glass of wine and a faraway look. And when it ended, he didn't speak right away. "You should let her see it," he said quietly, "not because she earned it, but because she clearly doesn't understand what she missed." So I sent her a message. "If you want to know what actually happened, come to the studio this Friday at 3 o'clock. We'll show you the full footage. Nothing's edited." She replied 2 hours later. One word. "Fine." She showed up 10 minutes late, wearing pearls. Of course. She walked into the small documentary studio like she was touring a nonprofit she might consider funding. Polite, composed, emotionally distant. I didn't make small talk. I didn't hug her either. Diana had arranged the screening room. Just 2 chairs, 1 monitor, and a silence you could hear. The lights dimmed softly. I pressed play. For the first 5 minutes, she sat with her arms crossed. I glanced at her from the corner of my eye, waiting for the scoff, the smirk, the dismissive laugh. It didn't come. There was no narration, no music, only the real sounds. Footsteps on gravel, glasses clinking, someone laughing softly in the back row, my voice trembling as I read my vows, Adam stumbling through his voice catching when he said, "You make me feel like I've come home." At minute 12, she shifted in her seat. At minute 18, her eyes blinked harder than usual. At minute 20, when the screen showed us dancing under those lights, lanterns glowing like warm little planets above us, she finally exhaled like she'd been holding her breath since it started. When the film ended, I paused it. The frame froze on the yard, empty chairs, flickering candle stubs. She said nothing for a long time. Then finally, she spoke. "It looked expensive." I waited quietly. She cleared her throat once. "You didn't say it would be like that." I turned to her, calm. "Would that have changed anything?" She opened her mouth, closed it again. "I invited you," I said. "You chose not to come." "You didn't make it clear." I cut her off, calmly. "I wasn't auditioning for your approval, Mom. I was getting married." She looked away. The silence didn't sting. When she finally looked back at me, her voice was sharp, defensive. "You made us look like we didn't care." I tilted my head gently. "Did you?" She flinched, just a little. A twitch at the corner of her mouth, barely visible, but she didn't answer. I stood, walked to the door, and opened it. "Thanks for coming." She lingered in half rise, then sat back down, briefly. "I didn't know it would be beautiful," she murmured. "That's the point," I said softly. "You didn't care to find out." She didn't hug me on the way out. I didn't expect her to. But as the door clicked shut behind her, I felt something shift. Not closure, not healing, just clarity. I didn't hear from her again, not for a while. No calls, no long texts, no backpedaling disguised as apologies, just silence. And strangely, it felt more honest than anything we'd said in years. I didn't go to Thanksgiving, no invitation for Christmas either. No one officially cut me off, but no one reached out either. It was a quiet kind of exile, the kind that starts as distance and slowly becomes absence. And I was okay. Not in a triumphant, movie-ending kind of way, but in a quiet, grounded, day-by-day kind of way. The kind where you stop knocking on a door that was never yours to begin with. So I poured into work, into Adam, into the life we were building. The full version of our wedding film was picked up by an arts collective in Seattle. They showed it in a gallery series called Intimate Architecture. We flew up for the opening night. People cried. One couple even asked if we were actors. I told them gently, no. Just a woman who got married in her backyard because that's where her life really began. 6 months passed. One afternoon, I came home and found a small package on the porch. No return address. Just my name in careful, familiar cursive. Inside, a photo. From Rebecca's wedding. One I'd never seen before. I was in the background, holding a tray of champagne glasses. My face was turned slightly, eyes fixed on something just outside the frame. On the back, a note. Just 2 lines. I looked right past you that day. I see you now. No name, no signature. But I didn't need one. I didn't frame the photo. Didn't call to say thank you. I just slipped it quietly into the back of our wedding album, tucked behind a photo of Adam spinning me beneath the lanterns. Both of us laughing, barefoot, lit from beneath by the warm glow of 100 tiny lights. That's the version I'll tell. If anyone ever asks about our wedding, I'll tell them we did it our way. I'll say we planted wildflowers where others expected roses, that we fed our guests with our hands, not from a caterer's checklist, that we danced on gravel and laughed under paper moons, and that we invited everyone who mattered, even the ones who never showed. Because in the end, a wedding isn't made by who attends, it's made by who stays. And when I look at the photos now, I don't see what's missing.